Pledge allegiance to the flag. Roll call of supervisors, please. I will note I have confirmation that Supervisor Decker, Elverman, Kohlmeyer, Haas, Arrington, and Celebrate will not be with us this evening. Appears that Supervisor Grulich is not here as well. I think that just about covers it all. I didn't see him. 4. Grady's here. 5. There we go. No, we're still short. Are you here? Yeah. If you haven't, just push your button again, please. Whether you think you did or didn't. There we go. That looks about right, doesn't it? 21 in attendance. All right, first order of business is citizen comments. If you would like to address the board, please approach the podium and the microphone. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. State your name and address. Speak loudly into the microphone, or remain seated would be fine as well, I guess. Here we go. I think so too. Maybe not.
Excuse me, I just put a piece of candy in my mouth.
Pull that mic down, please. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Linda Horton, and I live at 4804 39th Avenue in Kenosha. Last week there was a very disturbing article in the paper, and it had to do with Beth.
With what?
With Beth, our sheriff,
Oh, thank you.
and the recall Walker people. I was very disappointed in the fact that Beth did not know what was going on around him, did not know what that area had for rules and regulations about being on the street or asking people to do something. They were told they could not wear their sign on their body that says Recall Walker. And this was by Beth. That was wrong. We, as people, have the right to wear what we want in public. They wear a uniform. They sell tickets. They ask for things from us. These people were not, and I mean were not, soliciting. They were not selling. They were not being bullies, because I stood on corners and I was called names. I was given the finger, I can't tell you how many times, and I feel that was wrong. That was an infringement on my rights, and Beth was infringing on our rights also. He wears a uniform. He's soliciting his uniform. What's the difference between his uniform and saying, I'm sheriff, and me wearing a recall sign saying, I want to recall? That's my right. I wanted to recall. And we got the million, and we're going to do it.
No. We're not going to do that. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Any other citizen comments? Please move to the podium quickly if you'd like to address the board.
My name is Raymond Cameron. I reside at 2312 63rd Street. I'm a resident of Kenosha County. I wish to say that as a citizen of Kenosha County that I want to thank this Board of Supervisors for the opportunity for public comment. I hope to keep my oratory within the 5 minutes allotted. In the Gettysburg Address, President Abraham Lincoln said that the purpose for the war between the states was to preserve government of the people, by the people, and for the people so that it would not perish from the earth. I am troubled to hear reports of potential violations of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution being committed against members of the Recall Walker effort. I am told that this infringement of free speech rights took place in the town of Brighton in a public park as a result of a misunderstanding by the Sheriff's Department as to the applicability of a supposedly relevant Kenosha County ordinance. It appears that in the opinion of Assistant Corporation Counsel Bernie Vosh that this is not the case, or that this is the case, I'm sorry, and that there was a free speech violation. As all of you know, there is a need for more comprehensive public transportation throughout Kenosha County. It is my belief that this need should be satisfied by a county-run shared ride taxi. Much of the funding could be obtained by a grant from the Wisconsin DOT. There is also a need for expanded service and expansion of the Western Kenosha County bus. This could help people who cannot maintain employment, who do not have a vehicle, or dependable transportation. There is a need for a special needs list and more access to CERT training by people with disabilities. This concludes my comments to this board.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Any other citizen comments? Seeing no one else approaching the podium, citizen comments are closed. First order of business is a Kenosha County Board Committee Structure Evaluation Report from UW Extension. Ms. Winnett, nice to see you. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Molinaro and Kenosha County Board of Supervisors. Good evening. This is the summary report of the evaluation that we began in October and concluded in November of input from you as County Board Supervisors, as well as administrative staff and youth and governance. Again, I'm Teddy Winnett, Director of the Kenosha County UW Extension Office, and my colleague here is Kristen Lee. She is the community planning educator in our office, and she and I are the two that helped coordinate the process. So let me give you a little bit of background. We met with the executive committee in September to review the purpose of the evaluation, asking such questions as, is it working? Is it effective? Are there efficiencies of staff time and or supervisors' time? And then executive committee members also wanted to know what would, if we were to determine, or I asked if we were to determine what would success look like. Supervisors responded that meetings would have improved, committees are more efficient, supervisors are more engaged with county government. So tonight we're going to share with you the results of that survey. And I want to say, first of all, congratulate yourselves, because you gave some outstanding responses in terms of the number of individuals who replied. A total of 53 surveys were returned. That's an 86% response rate for you as a county board. So 24 supervisors responded. And for the county administration and staff, there were 29 responses, and that was an 85% response rate. So for those of you who've done any kind of surveys at all, you need to know that is very, very good. As supervisors, you were afforded the opportunity to respond to the survey in a hard copy and mail it or return it to our office, or electronically. County administration and staff only were able to respond electronically. And we did include our youth and governance members. I want you to know the survey went to all 14 of them. However, because of the timing of the reorganization, which was in April, they were not seated in their committees until May. Many of them were not familiar with the previous structure. So there were only 2 youth and governance members who had any knowledge of the previous committee structure, and those 2 surveys were returned, but because that is such a small number, it's not valid. They are not included in any of the results. So it was a very noble attempt on behalf of the executive committee to include them, but however, due to the small number of responses and their lack of knowledge in a previous committee structure, they're not included. So the summary report, the final written report, is on your desk, and you can follow along. I know you're going to be tempted to jump right to the comments, but stick with me for just a bit as we go through some of the charts and walk our way through what the responses actually were. Let me say, overall, the majority of the respondents really feel the structure is working well. The results are very close to a bell curve. In fact, I don't get to see that very often, so I was pretty excited. Wow, that's pretty darn good. Overall, it's trending very positive. So what is your opinion of the new committee structure if you're a supervisor versus county administration and staff? So we broke the two out, and you're going to see that the administration and staff, more administration and staff feel that it's working well. So right in the middle there, working well and working moderately are much higher bars for administration staff. That's almost the perfect bell curve, and a little more equal line distribution among the supervisors. You'll see that when we ask and we split out by years of tenure for supervisors, supervisors with less than 6 years of experience, about 33%, were more likely to report that they feel the new committee structure is not working as compared to supervisors who have 6 or more years. So 73% reported overall the structure is working well. So you can just see that the trends there. Some of the comments provided to what made you feel this way, what would be your opinion, or what were some of the reasons you might give to this, were captured around themes around efficiencies, giving that processes have been streamlined, we have improved cooperation. Some were power concerns, comments about the perceived power of the executive committee, and issues regarding time. Some do feel that the committee meetings are too long. Now I'm on page 4, if you're following along. As a result of the change, county board committees are more effective, about the same, or less effective. Well, about half of the respondents really feel the new committee structure is working as effectively as the previous structure. And nearly an equal number feel it's as effective, more effective as it is less effective. Those are almost equal bars, as you can see. So the majority feel it's about the same. When we split that out between supervisors versus administration and staff, you're going to see that more administration and staff feel the effectiveness of the committee is about the same. You'll also see on the bottom of page 4 how we split out supervisors' responses by years of tenure. For the elements of the survey, we broke that out for every answer, but I'm not going to show each of those slides for the purposes of time here this evening. I am going to, however, note that there is a consistent trend that supervisors with less than 6 years of tenure respond less favorably to each question than those supervisors with more than 6 years. That seemed to be a very consistent trend we saw throughout all the results. On page 5, we move to that question of, are committees more efficient? Are we getting business conducted in a more efficient manner? How is the meeting being run? And almost a third of the respondents, again, feel that the structure is either more efficient or about the same. So we get a majority, again, trending very positive that in terms of the efficiencies of the committee, you're doing pretty well. Looking at the breakout between supervisors and the county employees, the administration and staff, we have similar results as we did with effectiveness. More administration and staff are reporting committee efficiency to be about the same as it was given the previous committee structure. The majority of supervisors feel the committees are more efficient, but that's also about the same as in regard to the previous answer. As the result of the change, are the committees more effective? My work more effective. So now I'm looking at myself as the individual supervisor or as an administrator or staff. Answering the question personally for yourself, 60% reported that the effectiveness of their work has remained about the same. An overwhelming majority. Okay. Splitting that out between supervisors and administration and staff, we see that supervisors are pretty evenly split between more effective and less effective, whereas at the administration and staff, a majority are feeling it's about the same. As a result of the change, has my work become more efficient? Similar to effectiveness, about 60% are reporting that their efficiency of work has remained the same under this new committee structure. And again, with supervisors and staff, similar trend. More administration and staff feel it's about the same. Do you believe that supervisors are more involved or less involved in county governance? I'm now on page 8. Over a third of the respondents reported an increased involvement of county board supervisors as a result. And about 42% feel it has remained the same. Splitting the responses out by supervisors versus admin and staff, you're going to see we get very similar results as we have in the past. More administration and staff are responding with more involvement and about the same. Again, trending pretty positive. Where these supervisor results are more involved and about the same, and with less a percentage, so it's not quite as strong as the administration and staff. But again, overall trending positive. Do you believe that you are more involved in county governance or less involved? On page 9, you'll see that the majority, 62%, feel that their own involvement has remained about the same. 23% are actually responding they're more involved. Splitting it out again, supervisors versus admin and staff, consistent reporting results as well. More administration and staff saying about the same. Overall, the trend is positive for the new change. We did capture some themes that were reported in the comments when respondents were asked to identify strengths. I also want to add here that you'll find throughout comments there were some committee-specific suggestions that were identified. You may decide those warrant some further consideration and investigation at another time. I mean, it may be an opportunity for specific committees to zero in on some of those and give consideration for that at a future meeting. So some of the themes that we captured as we read through the responses were a better use of time. Again, these were strengths. Overall, individuals responded that they think that there's less overall meetings, so it's a better use of our time. Increased efficiency, where there's more opportunity for input from supervisors, an opportunity to gain understanding of just more than one department, and a more integration of policy process. There were a fair number of pros and cons regarding the consolidation. There were reports of individuals who thought it was a positive change to restructure and it made sense, and I think you'll see there were others there who responded not necessarily so. So you had both pros and cons. Regarding supervisor involvement, comments were such as that more members are bringing more ideas, and it would allow more consensus before items are taken before the full county board. There were also some responses regarding greater knowledge, that more supervisors have more knowledge around all county issues or increased county issues. Regarding responses, suggestions for weaknesses, what might not be working so well, let me first say there were a lot more comments around strengths than there were weaknesses, so another positive trend. We captured them under the themes of time, power, consolidation, and efficiency. Again, with times, now folks were saying meetings are longer, agendas are long, people start to lose interest. Regarding power, responses reported indicate there's too much power on some committees, and especially the executive committee was identified. Regarding consolidation of combining committees, some felt it was a good idea to combine finance and administration. Others thought perhaps not, it's too complicated, that there are too many complicated issues. You'll find many comments throughout regarding finance and administration. And regarding efficiency, comments around workload concerns, too much debate, too much for one committee to take on, and that there's a need to improve coordination to involve the appropriate staff in the committees. So when asked to provide recommendations to improve it, what would you suggest to improve the committee structure? What would you recommend? Those suggestions range a lot around finance and administration, splitting that committee back out. Comments around the executive committee, again related to power, also around considerations that the legislative function as it relates to the executive committee perhaps could be better served in the previous structure as it was a separate committee. That there is, should be an opportunity to review the appointment process of how supervisors are appointed to committees, and some suggestions were made. Suggestions around policy issues regarding policy procedures with the county board. Setting agendas for committee meetings, reorganizing and reprioritizing those agenda items. Other suggestions range from returning to the former structure to keeping the new structure. It's working just fine. So you have to almost think of it as that wide perspective that some are in agreement with the new structure and others feel it's working or not working so well. There were what I'll call a potpourri of other miscellaneous recommendations that you'll be able to see there in the comments when you have a bit more time to dig into them. Overall, the results are showing that it is trending positive. I would recommend further investigation. It might be helpful to review the recommendations in a bit more detail, maybe take a closer lens and look at them, especially around increasing efficiency and effectiveness of committees, especially when there are recommendations for a specific committee. That specific committee may want to give that some further dialogue. So again, in summary, the data tells us that a majority of the respondents, and again about 86%, responded, feel that the new committee structure is working well. Positive trends on all aspects as it relates to functioning and the effectiveness, the efficiencies, as well as more county board supervisors are involved with county governance. And you recall at the beginning, that was the snapshot of what success would look like. And the majority of the people felt that it was. With such a high return rate, you can feel confident that the new committee structure overall is working well. That's my report, Chairman.
Any questions of Teddy and or, yes, sir. Hold on one second here.
I'm Elverman.
Yes, I see that.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Teddy and Kristen, thank you very much for putting this together and doing the legwork, and of course our thanks to UW Extension. Just a question though, in the first part you had delineation between supervisors more than 6 years experience, less than 6 years experience. Why 6? Where did 6 come about? Do you have a comment there?
Actually, I did it by looking at the trends. If you look at, let's even just pick on any of them. I'll pick page 5. At the very bottom, the supervisor's response by years of tenure. I just picked 6 because I can start to see that there are more blue bars as you hit the 6-year mark going left to right. Then there are opposite of that, the less than 2 years and 2 to 5 years. You can see that the bars are much more trending towards less efficient, more efficient. And it just seemed to be a consistent trend throughout. So I literally we just picked that as the demarcation. Those particular years are the years in which you could identify yourself. When you look at the back of the report, you'll see a copy of the original survey, and you were asked to identify how many years you've been in as a county board supervisor, and those were the delineations, less than 2, 2 to 5, 6 to 9.
Thank you, Teddy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As usual, I'd like to thank Extension for their fabulous work on any issue that we give them. Just one comment that I have. I noted that in our meeting minutes from the Joint Legislative and Finance Committee, where this was initially discussed on April 5th of 2011, that there was a possibility of reviewing this as a committee of the whole for discussion purposes. And I don't know that that ever actually made it to the board floor as part of what we passed, but certainly I think it might be wise for the chairman to schedule this for a committee of the whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no lights, certainly I'd also like to thank UW Extension. I don't know if I had to ask you if you would take on this challenge. You just always seem to volunteer to do it and do it well, so I appreciate that. Thank you all, both very much, and the feedback was good. Also to the board and staff, the feedback, certainly the return rate was very high. It's important to get a good feel for where things are at. I recognize if you read through the comments, Clearly, there's going to be some disagreement from myself, and I'm assuming others, on where some of these comments were. And I think if you break them down and understand where they came from, some aren't so surprising. I personally believe the committee structure continues to work well. There is some work to do with it, no question. I will take under consideration the point about having a discussion here at the Committee of the Whole. And recognize that, you know, I spent 8 terms in this county board before this discussion came up. And it is important, I think, and I've said it here before, to continue to look for ways to improve, to make sure that what you're doing and the way in which you're doing it makes sense. And it's been an awful long time since the committee structure was looked at, and I think it's something that needs to be continually evaluated as you go forward. Hopefully, regardless of where we end up next term, that is something that continues to happen. So again, to the extension staff, I appreciate the input. Next on the agenda is a information presentation of the KD Park Master Plan. And as Jessie is getting herself set up here, we're going to swap out one projector for the next. If we'll all cross our fingers that what we're about to do here will go flawlessly. I'll just make a couple of quick comments. You know, I recognize that we have 2 presentations on the agenda this evening. Anytime we undertake tasks here on the county board that require review of the results, we have to anticipate that we're going to spend some time to understand what, in fact, the committees have accomplished. So I'm sure I've heard some grumbling already. I'll hear some more, and I'm just going to ask you to be patient. There isn't any reason why we shouldn't expect, when we undertake the tasks that we do, that we shouldn't put the time in to be brought up to speed. I'm going to turn it over to Ray for a moment here, and he can make an introduction while Jessie gets herself ready to go.
Yeah, while Jesse's getting set up, just to give the board kind of a refresher, I guess, on how we got to this point, you all should have a copy, a formal hard copy of the KD Park Master Plan on your desk this evening. You should have got an electronic copy last week, so hopefully you had a chance to review it electronically. And tonight, at least, you got something you can take home with you. Jesse's presentation tonight is going to be a synopsis of that, obviously, because there's 72 pages in there. There's a well of information there. So I do urge you to take the time to go through it. She's going to walk you through a summarized version of it tonight. But just on how we got to that point, how that document came to exist. It would have been late 2009 when the executive presented the 2010 budget to the board. He had mentioned he was going to form a green ribbon committee to explore just what might be possible to do out at the KD Parklands. The committee was put together. You'll see that there's a roster of who sat on that committee. It was a collection of Chairman Molinaro was on there, Chairman of the Public Works Committee, now Public Works Committee, Dennis Elverman was on there, as well as a couple of other supervisors sat in on committee meetings as they occurred over the past 2 years, really. There was also a number of business leaders, local education leaders. It was a pretty diverse kind of a committee. And the basic task was to put together a vision statement for what could happen out at KD Park. What kinds of things make sense to consider developing? And there was this theme that emerged of a sustainable kind of a park. So once the vision statement was put together, which there's a copy of that in the report, there was work groups that were set up. And the work groups were tasked with 3 different things. There was an education work group that was put together that Teddy Winnett actually headed up. There was a technology work group put together, which some of the folks at Gateway, Terry Simmons, actually headed up for Gateway. And there was a recreation work group. There was 3 components that we were going to look at including in that park: an educational aspect, a technological aspect, and a recreation, obviously, aspect. There were citizens on these work groups. So there were citizens at large. They were involved in the education aspect, the technology aspect, and the recreation aspect. And basically what those work groups did was, over the course of the better part of a year, they'd met regularly and pulled together kind of nuts and bolts things that may make sense to consider putting in an overall park. After that, would have been late in 2010, we went through a QBS process, which is similar to an RFP process, for selecting a professional consultant to help us actually put together the document you've got before you. We went through a pretty rigorous interviewing process. Chairman Molinaro sat on the interview committee. Frederick Brookhouse from Snap-on Tools Corporation, who was a member of the Green Ribbon Committee, sat on that selection committee. We interviewed a number of really qualified firms. We picked JJR, that's where Jesse Fink is from. And I think they've done a real solid job in pulling together all the information that had been laid out by the Green Ribbon Committee as well as the work groups, pulled it together and developed this master plan. The one thing that I guess there's a bunch of stuff in here that's I think very important, but the one thing I think that's most important to take away is that the whole thing was developed in a modular kind of a concept. That being, most projects are very linear in how they are developed, right? You start here and you got to do this, then you got to do that, then you got to, and so forth. And when you come up at the end of the day, whatever your grand total dollar amount is to create that, whatever it is, you have to do all these steps to get there. This isn't developed that way. This is very modular, so think of it as plug and play. Components of the park that have been identified are like little modules. If we develop a partnership with someone that desires to get involved in a geothermal aspect, an educational geothermal project that makes sense to put in the park, we may be able to do that piece just on its own. We don't have to do anything else. Right now, I think most of you know the parklands itself are open on a limited basis, but from the standpoint of having the safe entrance that's been constructed by the Wisconsin DOT last year, so we've got a safe entrance into the park now, and we've constructed a number of hiking trails throughout the park with grant funding from youth at risk programs that we coordinated with the Human Services Department. That's what's out there right now. It's a functional park as it is right now from a recreational standpoint, but there is so much more that the park can become, and that's what the master plan attempts to lay out. Enough from me. I'll turn it over to Jessie and let her walk you through it.
Thanks, Ray. I greatly appreciate that introduction. Before I get started, I'd also like to mention the other members of my team that could not be here with me tonight from Smith Group JGR. I was the project manager. I'm a landscape architect and an environmental scientist. We also had senior ecologist Mark O'Leary on our staff, on our team, as well as architect Bethany Johnson, lead landscape architect Greg Calpino, and in-house we also had civil engineers Cassie Goodwin and Dave Woolman assist with the plan as well. As Ray outlined, the Green Ribbon Committee created a vision statement for Katy Park before we were involved. And this vision statement really looked beyond traditional county park to what this park could be in terms of both education and recreation for the county, in terms of attracting people to come here to learn, attracting people, residents, to stay here and enjoy what the quality of life that Kenosha County has to offer. And with that, it really looked beyond traditional recreational uses in order to create more of a benchmark model park that could be looked at throughout the nation, that would teach people on how to live sustainably and how to recreate sustainably, and really create a real-world laboratory for the different vocational trades in the area, as well as the colleges and universities from a research perspective, and really capitalize on Kenosha County's location as kind of the triangle between Madison, Milwaukee, and Chicago to bring people from those different regions into the county to learn and to grow. When we were brought in, we had a process that we followed with the Green Ribbon Committee in order to create the document that you see in front of you today. We started with an existing conditions analysis and inventory, just looking at what the park is now, where it is located, and its different natural features. We also talked to the Green Ribbon Committee work groups, which had done a lot of background informational gathering and program development for us before we began. We looked at several case studies of different parks, not only throughout the nation, but throughout the world, in terms of places where they are trying to educate and recreate simultaneously. With this background information, we developed 2 alternative concept plans for the Green Ribbon Committee to consider. And from those 2 concepts, we created a consensus plan that took the best pieces of each of them and combined them into the master plan document. With that, we then started to look at phasing and costs and provide the next steps for implementation. With that, what I'm going to go over tonight is kind of the overview of that process and a brief overview of the plan itself. As you say, there's a large document in front of you that details out everything in great detail in terms of the different facilities that are proposed there and the programs to take place. I encourage you to read it and really understand the effort that the committee put forward into creating this master plan. As I said, we began with an environmental framework or a site analysis. This is a science-based assessment of the existing park conditions and what is out there, and the ability to support the different programs that have been proposed from both an educational and recreational standpoint. We first looked at the local and regional context. So where does the park sit in regards to the different population centers throughout the county, as well as to other recreational areas and facilities, different parks, DNR lands, trails, as well as where it sits in relationship to schools, because those were proposed to be such a big partner in developing and using the park site in terms of both the K through 12 education system as well as the colleges and universities from Kenosha County. We then took the next step in and we started looking at the local context and connections. What is adjacent to KD Park? KD Park sits at the headwaters of the Palmer Creek watershed. That is a Class 3 trout stream that winds its way down to the Fox River. It is also adjacent to the New Munster Wildlife Area, which you see outlined here in green. That's over 1,000 acres of DNR managed wildlife lands. It's also adjacent to the village of Twin Lakes. What was really important about this is in terms of connections and how do we connect to the park, how do we access the park, and where are people coming from. In terms of ecology, we're talking about those connections in terms of the way that the water flows through the park. How can we develop the park and the lake and use it and not impact that trout stream per se? In terms of ecology, we're also looking at the wildlife connections that can happen through the space and the ability to restore different types of habitats to support bird species or to support mammal activity. We're also looking in terms of the transportation network that serves the park. The Highway 50 regional corridor is going to be the major portal probably for most of the visitors accessing the park. And so we looked at the idea of, well, we need some sort of connection right at KD and Highway 50 in order to bring people to the park and expose them to it, as well as local portals from the village of Twin Lakes. We then took the next step in looking at the park itself in terms of the topography on site, how the water moves through the various wetland communities on site and filters through to the lake, which was the remnant of the quarrying operations that occurred until 1995. We also looked at the existing natural communities on site. There's several oak savannas that are remnant on site with large oak tree canopies, although the understories have been taken over by many invasive species such as buckthorn and honeysuckle. We also looked at site access. As Ray said, the connection point at Highway KD into the site was improved within the last couple years, so it's already a good connection, a good safe access point that we intended to reuse as part of the overall master plan. With all this information in hand, we then looked at several different suitability analyses, both for the ecology and in terms of what habitats can be restored on site, as well as where development could best occur, where facilities could be located. This particular slide just shows an example of that analysis that was done in terms of the development suitability or where facilities could be located on site. Areas that are shown in white have less restraints and more opportunities for built structures, whereas areas in red are those that we should probably stay out of. With that analysis in hand, we then turned to the work groups and their program elements that they had begun to define for the park going forward. And once we started looking at this long, long list of program elements, I believe it takes up a few pages in your report of all the different things that could happen out here, we realized that most of them could be folded into the site and didn't require a lot of facilities to take place. However, there were some that could conflict with other uses. And so as we started to look at the various program elements, we had to rank them with criteria such as, does it meet the overall vision for the park? Does it support that idea of sustainability and education? Does it provide the regional or the local draw? Part of the reason for this park is to bring other people in from other communities in to use it. and to learn there. So the regional and a local draw scored very highly, whereas just a local draw was not quite as high. Does it support multiple user groups? So if we construct a facility, can it support people that are accessing the lake for fishing, as well as access in terms of providing educational support rooms and facilities such as restrooms? The fourth criteria was, can it be accommodated by the site conditions? So that site analysis that we just discussed in terms of, can it actually be located on the site, or does it require too much space that we don't have available? And then we always look at fundability. Can we find other sources of funding that could help implement the idea? And our goal, as I said, was to accomplish as many of the different possible uses without compromising the park's mission. Now, I don't expect anybody to be able to read this slide from where you're sitting, but this is just a listing of the combined categories of the different site program uses, and shows how we used a spreadsheet scorecard in order to rank them in terms of whether they are a local attraction, a local and countywide attraction, or a local, countywide, and regional attraction for many different user groups. And some of the things that scored very highly on this were some that the committee had put forward in terms of scuba diving facilities. The lake is very deep, it's very clear. It would make a great scuba diving lake. We talked to many that would like to use it in that respect. So that was one of the things that said, well, that could be a very regional draw for those different user groups in terms of recreation. Other things that scored very highly were the idea of the sustainable demonstration displays for wind power or for solar energy, because of the different partnerships in the regional and local draw to support the local educational community and the learning laboratory basis. Another thing that scored very highly that was something new was the idea that the site could support a retreat center. So with these different displays on sustainability and energy, that maybe corporations or various business groups or educational groups would like to come here to be able to use the site to have a day-long retreat, and would have facilities to do so. Once we had the program elements ranked and we had the analysis done on site, we started placing the different facilities and the program uses on the site. This graphic represents the final consensus master plan that was created by the committee. And as I said previously, it provides for all those traditional county park uses, while also weaving in this idea of the sustainable education component into the site with different learning laboratories and demonstration elements. We also looked at integrating the park with adjacent Bassett Park to the south. That's a town-owned park, but because of the adjacency and because the southern access point for the park actually goes through Bassett Park, we felt that we needed to make sure that what we were planning for the county's property also worked well with the town's property, and that going forward they could cooperate to operate the facilities. With that, I'm going to go over the key systems of the master plan, and this kind of looks at the plan in terms of layers. So the first layer that we'll look at will be the facilities or the built structures that are being proposed for the site. Then we'll look at renewable energy and waste management systems, which is more of that sustainable energy component. We'll also look at the restoration, so in terms of the habitats on site and what can be restored out there to fully functioning natural communities. We'll look at a access and circulation overlay, and then finally as the recreational layers. The systems overview for the facilities, the idea was to create different destinations throughout the site. And with that, we meant that we didn't want just one center in the site and that no one would go out and use the rest of the site itself. The idea was to create more of a scattered approach where people could learn and discover by going out in the site itself. So with that, we've got a different layering of facilities. We've got a main center building that's right on the shore of the lake. And then we've got the next level are these learning laboratories. There are 3 of them. One is out more so in the middle of the site that's not adjacent to a roadway. The other 2 are along the road on the drive-in. And these learning labs would be the main demonstration centers, so where we might have a partner that would come in from either a university or a vocational partner that would come in and maybe set up a learning display on wind power or solar. There are also special facilities that are proposed on the site. There is an energy bridge that is proposed over KD. This idea was that we could link to the adjacent New Munster Wildlife Area to provide trail access throughout both sites, as well as provide kind of an iconic element that would welcome people to the park and really get people excited about, hey, what's that? I see this bridge. Where does it go to? And encourage people to discover it. We've also got a maintenance facility that is located right inside the front entrance for easy access. And finally, we've got probably the third layer of buildings, which are smaller structures scattered throughout the site, which would be trail facilities, provide resting stops, but would be small buildings that would respond to different rest stops or landscape vistas from each unique site. One of the ideas behind the architecture is that it itself could demonstrate sustainability. And the idea with that is that we would demonstrate different kinds of materials in many of these different structures. One structure may be made from natural local materials such as straw bale construction or rammed earth, while another building might showcase different new technologies such as walls that are made out of algae that generate power through photosynthesis, or roofing that is actually solar cells. The main building plan right on the lake, we looked at a couple different architectural concepts, and these are at the master plan level, so they look more at use per square foot, so how much square foot do we need for different program elements, rather than exactly what is the building going to look like in the long run. And we actually had two different phases for the main building. The first phase provides an educational gathering space that could be used for small group instruction, such as a school class, either from a university or a K through 12, or for a yoga program or some other recreational component. They would also have support office space, and that space would take up about 1,600 square foot. There would also be a prep kitchen, toilet facilities with showers that would support the scuba diving aspect, as I mentioned earlier, as well as circulation and support spaces would be a total building footprint of about 3,500 square feet. Phase 2 would move forward once there was a partner involved that could look at that potential retreat space. And in this, we basically add about 2,200 square foot of additional dining and retreat space, and build out to a full kitchen instead of just a prep kitchen, which would give an approximate building size of 7,000 square foot. Now, the idea for this building is that not only would we showcase alternative energy connections to the lake in terms of geothermal production being right on the edge of the water, we could hook up a geothermal system for the heat pump, but also to look at building an earth-sheltered building. This has both alternative energy resources as well as screening that building so that you don't see a large facility sitting right on the edge of the lake. This slide gives an idea of what that building might look like, as well as some of the trails and boardwalks accessing it. The smaller learning labs would be about 570 square foot apiece. That would include 500 square feet of learning space or demonstration space, and then a small toilet facility, which is basically a one-hole 70 square foot area. And as I said previously, these were kind of that next level out, so those three slightly smaller buildings. We also looked at a maintenance building that would have about 1,300 square foot of storage. That would include both open bay storage for tractors or other equipment, as well as a smaller enclosed storage area, as well as the toilet facility and break room for an approximate square footage of 1,800 square feet. This slide just gives an idea of what that bridge would look like. I talked about the iconic energy bridge that you might see going on KD, so that would heighten the sense of discovery and arrival for people coming to the park. The next system that I'd like to go over is the renewable energy and waste management demonstrations. And the entire idea behind this was to create a park-wide laboratory that could be used both by the vocational trades, the corporations actively manufacturing and industry within Kenosha County, as well as the different trade schools and colleges. The idea is to integrate these different sustainable energy displays into the ecology in a restored landscape. And they may include geothermal within the lake, a small-scale hydropower demonstration at the dam, solar and wind energy integrated throughout the park, and also biomass or fuel crops, which could be either a prairie that could be burned for biomass production, or also there's different nut crops that produce oil. And the whole goal for the energy use on site is that we would generate all energy that would be used on site would be generated there. So that would give us a net zero use from the project site. Any surplus energy that was generated from the different displays could then be returned to the grid and would actually have a revenue potential in terms of generating the power and getting dollars to run then park facilities. The idea would also be to support the county's commitment to the 25 by 25 clean energy goal, which is to generate 25% of the county's power by the year 2025 from alternative energy sources. And may spur energy districting in Kenosha County, whereby the energy for a given region is actually generated locally as opposed to brought in by huge power lines. We also had several goals for waste on site. The idea was to support more closed loop systems, whereas waste that is generated on the site does not actually leave the site. It is reused or recycled. That includes wastewater and stormwater being processed in facilities on the site. And then also the idea that we could collect biomass waste for energy and heat production, whether that is from the restoration work that is being done on site, or possibly even having a small-scale biomass generator that would run off of lawn clippings or yard waste from county residents. The next system to overview is restoration. And the goal here was to restore as much of the site as possible to natural functioning communities indigenous to Kenosha County. And some of the communities that we're looking at restoring on site, as I mentioned previously, we had oak savanna. So we had large oak trees in many portions of the site that had previously been open savanna that we'd like to bring back to those natural communities. The central portion of the site, which had been home to most of the sand and gravel quarry operations, would be ideal for a dry mesic prairie that could support many species of grassland birds, as well as restoring the different wetland areas on site. Right now, many of those wetlands are dominated by invasive species and a scrubby box elder forest. The idea for those would be to actually clear out a lot of that lowland degraded woodland area and actually restore it to more of a open sedge meadow prairie habitat, which is what you see here. Another idea of this was actually to consider restoring habitats that were historically found on site that aren't there anymore. And one of those habitats that was documented in the early surveys of this area are tamarack bogs. That would also create another research opportunity because tamarack bogs have not been restored in very many places, and it would actually have a lot of participation from many of the universities within the state that might be interested in looking at that habitat type and how to restore it. The last idea with the restoration was to consider changes in the water level of the lake. And the idea with that is that we could provide greater lake edge habitat if we drop the water level of the lake approximately 3 feet. And the idea there would be that right now that's a very steeply sloped quarry edge. And if we were to drop the lake level slightly, we could increase some of the emergent wetland vegetations along the shoreline. That would provide better protection of that shore edge from erosion. It would provide better stormwater capability for storing stormwater and better protection for downstream Palmer Creek. And it would also provide better fishing nurseries for young fish because it would give some vegetation for those fish to hide in. So there were several ideas behind the possibility of lowering those lake water levels slightly. The next system that I'd like to overview quickly is circulation on site. What you see here in all the dashed lines is the different trail network that's being proposed for the site, and I'll talk about that in a minute on the recreational slide in more detail. The biggest idea is that we are enhancing the existing entry points into the site, both into Bassett Park at the south as well as the existing entrance point on KD, with good signage, some of which is out there now in terms of the student entry signage contest that was held. We then are relocating the existing entrance road, kind of comes straight into the center of the site. We wanted to wind it around a little more in order to provide a much more scenic entry to the park. There would be a large parking lot at the main center, in the center of the park, as well as smaller pull-off spaces at those other facilities that are located along the drive. Bassett Park would retain also parking right at the sports facilities as well as at the dog park. The system overview for the recreation is that we've got an extensive trail network that is out there now, and we want to build upon it and make it better. And so we talked about how we could improve upon that, and the idea is that as many of these areas are restored with habitat restoration through the wetlands and such, we would add boardwalks and other links in order to see those different habitat types. We also talked about the idea of immersion trail, and the immersion trail was the idea that people should experience the park from different vantage points. And part of that was boardwalks and being able to access the edges of the lake, but also the idea that you could picnic in the treetops or see the site through the eyes of a bird. And so we'd have a canopy walk as part of the site that would allow people to experience what life in the trees would be. We also had the idea of an archaeological dig path that would show people the soil profile, which was one of the goals of Gateway Technical College's programs and soil exploration, as well as show people what we used to do with our trash. There's a small dump site that's along KD, along the east side of the lake, and this path would show what we used to do with our trash and encourage people to think differently in the future. We also had the idea of seeing a wetland community at eye level, so the idea of a path that would actually go down into the lake so that you could kind of, kids would be able to look out and see as if they're in the eyes of a frog. And we also had a series of zip lines that would connect from the learning laboratory demonstration sites back to the main center. And the idea behind this was not only to let people have a different mode of transportation in the park, but also to kind of invite a new recreator, a different type of person that wants to come and use the park for recreation in order to draw that more adventuresome spirit into the park. With that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the phasing strategy of the park. There is a full phasing strategy for each of the systems that I just discussed outlined in the report document. However, as Ray mentioned earlier, the idea with phasing for the park is on more of a modular approach. We wanted to make sure that you had the flexibility to engage the different partners as they come forward and an opportunity presents itself to capitalize on those different funding sources and go in more of a, I guess you'd say, a piecemeal fashion where you take advantage of opportunities as they are available. However, we did look at a few immediate phasing strategies in terms of what is needed to open the park now, catalytic projects that could be used to attract some of these different partners and attract different recreational or user groups to the park to get people aware of it and excited about it. And then strategies that would be used to attract partners and investment. And so the first projects that we looked at is what is needed to open the park. Some of the infrastructure you already have in place in terms of that newly constructed entrance into the park. But the next piece of that would probably be to construct this entrance road down to the lake edge and the parking associated with it. Some of the other ideas that are connected to that is if you're disturbing this area that you're constructing a new road in, you should probably restore the area that you've disturbed to the different natural systems, in this case the dry mesic prairie where the road is being constructed. And you can also capitalize on the way that that road is constructed to demonstrate different stormwater management and BMP strategies and interpret them. One of the other pieces that we looked at that might be needed sooner rather than later in terms of opening the park is the idea of emergency access for the lake. And built into the plan is the idea of a EMS boat ramp that would not be open for everybody in the public to use as a boat launching facility, but more so just in case of emergency use only. And that should go in sooner rather than later for the safety element. The catalytic projects that we looked at would be to look at recreation. In specific, bringing the scuba diver group in and expanding the use of the lake for fishing seemed like a pretty easy piece to capitalize on very quickly. The scuba divers said that they could use a submerged platform underneath in terms of launching their different scuba dive activities, but that's something that would be provided by the local dive shops and would be provided maybe at no cost to the county, just a partnership agreement. We also looked at the idea of expanded trails and having a trail map kiosk so that people knew where they were going. In terms of the educational component, we thought that we could interpret the vision for the park, so post the master plan out there and get people excited about the ideas, and maybe build one of those prototype smaller shelters that would be relatively easy to construct of those alternative construction materials, just to get people thinking about what the park could be. In terms of the energy and waste component, we also thought that maybe a composting toilet could be installed or solar lighting for the entry signage. And finally, we looked at how to attract partners or investors. So marketing this plan and getting out in front of people, as well as taking them to the site. The different groups that might be interested in supporting the plan could be taken out to the project site and shown these different catalytic projects in order to demonstrate the county's commitment to moving this forward. We also looked at an opinion of probable construction costs. The details of this are included within the report document. As I'd like to say, once again, these were developed using a modular strategy, so these costs would not be realized all at once, and they would be definitely shared within the partner groups as they move forward. Overall, between all the different facilities that are out there, we were looking at a price tag somewhere between $11 and $15 million. That it does not include those energy and waste systems in terms of solar energy or wind power generation, as we thought that those would be very heavily dependent on the different partners supplying those systems and wanting to implement them. So we did not include those in the cost. And then what happens next? The biggest thing to do is to start to secure those different partnerships that are available out there. And at first the focus can be on the smaller partnerships that are already in place in terms of with UW Extension and WDNR in terms of invasive species control out there. These might build on volunteer efforts rather than funding for the park, but in all they will continue to build that community awareness and support that's needed to implement the plan. And then finally, the idea is to increasingly open the park to the public use. It started opening last year in terms of some limited engagements, and I believe that the idea is to move forward and try to get it open more within the coming year. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just comments more than actually questions. As you can see in the document before you, there's been quite a bit of work put into this, and it's stretched over quite a period of time, beginning with the county executive, county board chairman, chairman of Public Works, Green Ribbon Committee, Public Works, Mr. Arbit, and the Smith Group. This is a compilation that has really taken some amount of fortitude and perseverance to put together. I would like to remind everyone here that this is very, very new. This was presented to our committee, Public Works and Facilities, just this past Monday. It will be undergoing review for the next at least 2 or 3 committee meetings that we have. So everyone, of course, is encouraged to come to these committee meetings as we review this. Comments are welcome, and we'd encourage your participation. Just my last comment to follow up. Our next meeting for Public Works and Facilities will be the 13th of February. Thank you.
Well, Supervisor Grady, that was not a question, and it took exactly the comment I was going to make, so I appreciate you bringing it up. This is a conceptual plan that has recently come out of the Green Ribbon Planning Committee. It has been shared, much like it was this evening, with the Public Works and Facilities Committee. It will be vetted through that committee for a period of time, and I don't want anyone to panic that this presentation here tonight in any way, shape, or form solidifies this plan or moves this plan forward. So there is ample time and opportunity to discuss. This is an update on where we are currently with the planning process of this park, which all of you know the Kenosha County has owned this property for quite some time. So I appreciate the statement, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Rose.
Thank you, and I thought this was an excellent presentation, an outstanding project. My question of the committee is, putting it in the form of a question, but I certainly think this is something that the board ought to support, and I would ask if the committee chair intends to bring this back in some form for our support, our adoption, as well as a timetable for those things that are going to be supported.
Well, let me do this, and I had, if you have other questions, I'll bring it back to Supervisor Rose. I had intended to make a couple comments at the end. I'll do that now. The Green Ribbon Committee, having wrapped up at least its initial charge, which is to develop what is the basis for a master plan for this park. The next couple of steps, which we have begun to formulate to date, is to understand the implementation and the operational model for this facility, in addition to defining who may or may not have the potential to be partners with Kenosha County. So if we take a look at the back page, and everyone does it in all walks of life and all types of work. You get a report like this, you immediately go to the last page, lower right-hand corner, and you try to get a sense of what that price tag is going to be, whether you're buying services, building a building, whatever it is you might be doing. So there is a significant price tag, and as you heard Jesse mention, it is an all-inclusive. There's some functions within this park or built forms within this park, the sustainable energy components, which are not accounted for. Again, I want to urge everyone here that it isn't a project that we're prepared to kick off today. I will, however, suggest that it is a project that has a significant opportunity for partnership with Kenosha County, where I don't believe the county taxpayers are going to have to bear the entire burden of this. I mentioned the operational model of this park. Mr. Brookhouse is with us, Frederick Brookhouse, who has been an integral member of this Green Ribbon Planning Committee. Great ideas. He's with Snap-on. I don't know, Frederick, your official title, because truth be told, we're always talking about something else. I guess I never entirely pay attention. But Frederick is the liaison with Snap-on in the realm of education. He deals with educational leaders throughout the country and beyond. He is very well tied in with Gateway, Parkside, Carthage. He travels the country looking at educational models for partnering with corporations, partnering with public entities. So Frederick is going to chair, along with Julie White, who's with us this evening as well. She's going to assist Frederick in chairing the next phase of this process, which is going to be to begin to identify how we roll this plan out to the public, to begin to get input, dialogue, look at opportunities for partnerships, as well as begin to talk about the operational model for what is currently referred to as the KD Park, and we're talking about trying to find at least an interim name, if nothing else, that speaks more to what this mission and vision is with the particular park, so we can begin to talk to those who may or may not have the ability, the willingness, and the wherewithal to partner with Kenosha County and bring some of these sustainable energy models to the park. So that's going to be a process that's going to take some time. It's going to take some time to understand exactly how we operate this park. I've said over and over again that, you know, we're accustomed to essentially mowing the grass once a week in the parks that we have and renting out structures, repairing them when they need to be repaired. This is not a traditional Kenosha County or county park anywhere that you might find in most communities. It also, in my opinion, is exactly what I think the county executive understands, and you see with some of the initiatives he's brought forward since he's gotten here. It's something I've advocated for quite a while, as many of you have as well. Frederick has the opportunity to have people into our community, primarily through Snap-on and through his role with Snap-on a regular basis. We talk about what it takes to grow economically here, economic development, what it takes to attract good, high-quality companies, jobs. How do we get people to stay in Kenosha County, live in Kenosha County, and grow in Kenosha County? The way you do that is quality of life. That's why bike paths are so important. That's why education is so important. That's why you hear me talk all the time about the fact that we have the number of higher education facilities here in Kenosha County that we have, and how important that is for the Fortune 500 companies of the world, or those who are looking to move to Kenosha County, why you need what we have here. It includes golf courses. It includes quality parks. It includes transportation and the ability to get from our community, which is so enticing to live in, to Chicago and Milwaukee without having to be in the big city if that's not where you want to live. That's why all of that is so important to bring together. This park is another element of that. It will bring to you the opportunity to partner with educational, higher, post-secondary educational institutions in Kenosha County, to attract kids from all over the region and beyond, into learning laboratories that they can experience and engage in on a regular basis. It also gives the average person who's just going to spend time in the park hiking, biking, fishing, doing whatever might be done, to also become a part of what is the future, which is sustainable energies. So you tie all that together, and it just is another component that sets Kenosha County apart, and it gives companies reason to relocate here because they can sell the area to their employees. I'm optimistic that we are going to be able to continue. Keep in mind, what we've done out there to date has been very limited cost to Kenosha County. I think over the next year for sure, 2 years, we can continue to make improvements to the park that are not going to be substantially costly. You know, we use the Youth to Work program, I believe. What, Ray, is that the which primarily helped improve the trails out there, built some of the shelters that are currently out there. We intend to continue to look for ways that we can keep those programs and students, youth engaged in the development of the park as we go forward, as we begin to map out a long-range plan for implementing the park, operating the park, and of course funding the park. And along with that is going to come how we partner and who we partner with. So maybe that clarifies a little bit, Supervisor Rose. I've got notes all over here that I just write down as we go. So, did you have anything else, Supervisor Rose?
No, thank you.
Supervisor Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment and a question. I guess first I'll start by quoting John Legend by saying the future started yesterday and we're already late. This is a wonderful, wonderful plan with the KD Park. Some wonderful ideas here, and there are things that are happening now. So my comment is, I think we do need to beef up our legislative prowess, because there's a number of things here that certainly the U.S. Department of Energy, certainly the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, our State Office of Focus on Energy, as well as our State Office of Energy Independence can be incredibly helpful with. Of course, also our state DNR. And then my question is, can we actually get this posted to the website, or is that a bit premature in this case?
Absolutely, it'll be posted to the website. I will leave that to some extent to Mr. Arbit and Chairman of the Facilities Committee, Public Works Committee, to determine whether or not we're prepared to do that right now. If not, it will be in relative short order once we give that committee the opportunity to at least spend a little bit more time than they have on the plan itself. I'm going to take your comments. First of all, yes, 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 and yes, all of which you mentioned we have talked about throughout the process of the planning. Jesse, I don't know if you're prepared to talk a little bit about grant funding opportunities. If not, I don't want to put you on the spot, but clearly that's been something we've talked about throughout the process.
There's a little section in the report on that, but I believe it definitely could be expanded upon by whichever committee chooses to move this forward in terms of looking at the latest and greatest grant opportunities, because they certainly change every day as different programs become funded or not funded at the federal level or the state level. So.
And also, as you bring partners on board, you'll have certain partners who will have the opportunity to bring funding, grant opportunities to the table. All of that is going to be something that will take some time and energy to understand and pulled together.
Yes. I'm aware that the Obama administration has had conversations with a number of communities around the United States regarding issues that have been referenced in this report, and it would be a shame for us as Kenosha to miss out. So we've got to jump on it when we can. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's what this plan speaks to across the board, so thank you. Supervisor Noble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have in many committees over the past few years introduced the concept of having a hot air balloon rally at that park, and I'd throw it out one more time because it's on the agenda. But I think it would be a great way to introduce the park to the community. You know, I mean, we had an open house and had, you know, maybe 100 people there. But if you had something extravagant like a hot air balloon rally, you could have 10,000 people show up for that, and it would energize the community and introduce the park to the people, and this plan needs that to happen. Some type of a major function happen at that park so the people see the potential and then get the introduction of what we hope to do there. And someday, I think I've said it now 6 or 7 times, and if it's not that, then come up with some other idea to introduce the community to that park, but hopefully somebody, something will catch on and we'll do it.
Agreed. And I don't know that hot air balloon rally has come up. Other opportunities and discussions have, and part of what we're trying to understand to date and right now is you can't just take this plan and drop it on, and I'm going to use Snap-on only because Frederick is here, and I can comfortably do it without you know, overstepping anything. You can't just take this plan and drop it on the CEO's desk and Snap-on and say, what we'd like you to fund out of this $14 million is a 2.8 here. You know, we're really looking for ways to get, and we've talked to a number of companies. We had an opportunity last week, Monday, to have a discussion with a company who I think has some real promise for Kenosha County in a number of different ways, and I'm hopeful it's going to be somewhere around this park as well. So in the short term here, we're looking to understand the best way to roll out the introduction of this particular master plan without necessarily knocking on the door and asking for a check. We're looking for that engagement. We're looking for companies that will have the wherewithal, but also the mission within their organization to say, we can get behind this. We can be a member of the committee that Frederick will chair, talking about the organizational model, talking about the move toward partnerships, talking about the implementation of this plan. So I can tell you the first reaction that we would get if this room was full of citizens right now, again, would be that last page of the report, bottom right-hand corner, $14+ million and then some, and the answer would be, you've got to be kidding me. In this economy, how are you going to do that? Couldn't agree with you more. Not what anybody's advocating. So I think you can accept this plan on some level at some point in the near future and understand that it is possible, if not extremely possible in my opinion, if you approach it right. If you approach it wrong, it will be a plan that will be on the shelf like many others that governments across the country produce and store. Again, good points. Supervisor Clark.
I guess I'll take the position of the taxpayers who are going to read this and say this is insanity. Unless you're prepared to go out and get private investment, we are maxed out on our debt limit. There's no room to borrow for this. Great planning, great ideas. I hope there are partners out there, our big corporate sponsors, but this is, it goes in line with the Gold Golf Course. We don't have the money for it. That's my comment.
Again, Supervisor Clark, I'm going to hope that you were listening to everything, primarily what I said, and that is that we're not intending to implement a park and spend $14 million today or any time in the near future. I guarantee you that if this park moves forward expeditiously, it will be with partners who will bear a significant burden of the cost. That's the intent, that's the approach, that is the plan. I too appreciate the fact that this is going to be something that taxpayers can't burden and shouldn't have to shoulder at this point in time. Isn't the intent of the committee, wasn't necessarily the discussion of the committee. We'll work with the administration to come up with a long-term implementation process or plan for this park. And at some point in time, we will see what is a higher and better use for KD Park than what it currently is experiencing right now. Any other comments? If not, Jesse, JJR, and JJR, I appreciate all that you've done. You're not, we're not cutting you loose yet. You've got some work to do with the committee. Ray, I appreciate all of your hard work, input, and certainly foresight. And Mr. Frederick, Ms. White, you have an awful lot of work to do, and I look forward to being a part of that as well. So we will continue to keep the board and the committee up to date. Supervisor Gray, do you have a comment?
Upcoming agenda item.
Okay, go ahead and hit your light again, or actually you can at some point maybe move back to your home base. No other questions. Thank you. Clerk.
Do announcements of the chair.
I'm sorry, announcements of the chairman. I have a couple. We are all, I'm sure, aware that we lost a great member of our community this past week, which is Patricia Johnson. In her own right, was someone who has done and contributed a great deal to Kenosha County in many ways, as an educator and as a volunteer, someone who spent a great deal of time giving back to Kenosha County. Her husband, Leonard Johnson, a longtime member of Kenosha County Board, also former county board chairman. She will be missed, as Leonard has been for quite some time. So certainly to her family, our thoughts go out to them. On a more positive note, Kenosha County has seen yet another national recognition that's deserved, and that is to our very own Miss America. Congratulations go out to the Kepler family. I have had the opportunity over the last over the last year to meet with, I guess, who is now Miss America on a couple of occasions. She is an exceptional woman, someone who I think will represent not only the pageant and all that brings, but also Wisconsin and Kenosha County in a significant way. So congratulations to all of them as well. The executive committee, couple of changes. We are going to have a meeting on the February 7th at 6 o'clock. We'll meet before the county board meeting of February 7th, and the only item on the agenda will be to discuss the contracting policy. Frank, I've made you aware of that, I think, through Linda, so that will be on the agenda February 7th ahead of the county board meeting, the executive committee. We're also going to make a change to the regularly scheduled executive committee. I don't know how many of you are committed to Valentine's Day, but rather than come up short on a quorum because we have members who are spending time with their significant other, we're going to move that to the 21st. Given that we don't have a county board meeting that evening because of the primary, I suspect that that won't be a problem. If it is, anyone on the executive committee, please let me know. Those are the only announcements I have. Supervisor reports. Any supervisor wishing to speak? Supervisor Grady, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to report upon our most recent monthly meeting of Public Works Facilities Committee. As it relates to the courthouse and Molinaro centers over here.
Supervisor Grady, could I just ask you to get into that microphone a little bit, please?
How's this?
Thank you.
Is that working?
Yes.
Yeah. As it relates to the two projects over here across the way, courthouse and Molinaro, substantially complete, on budget, on time. Still a little bit of work to be done on the east stairs, but substantially complete. Looking at the Brookside demolition project, that again is substantially complete for the winter. The building is completely down. There will be some remediation work come spring to do some parking lots, some seating, some type of a little bit of minor landscaping, but again, basically done for the winter. We had a report made by Director of Highways detailing our costs in terms of snow removal and regular winter road projects. And the report that I have in front of me goes through until January 9th, commencing November 1st. And as we are all aware, unseasonably nice, warm weather if you consider the lack of snow in that vein. when you consider overtime, fuel, and salt costs, $188,000 less than what the usual projection would be. Now, that does not take into account the most recent snowfalls we've had. We've had a little bit of snow and a little bit of work since then, but that is as of January 9th. As it relates to the KD Park, which we had a nice presentation on this evening, Saturday, February 4th, the park will be open from 7 a.m. until noon. There'll be snowshoe rental and demonstration by Pringle Nature Center, and also, snow permitting, there will be groomed cross-country ski trails. So as you know, the park's been open intermittently throughout the year, closed in the winter months, but Saturday, February 4th, if you care to put that on your agendas and attend, might be well worth it. And then just to reiterate, our next meeting, usually being the first Monday of the month, is now moved to the 13th. All welcome to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Rose.
Today, the Kenosha News reported, if you've read the front page, that a group, KMD Associates or company, was joining with the Menominee Indian tribe with respect to this casino. I'd like to ask the Corporation Counsel, with perhaps assistance from his outside counsel, to find out some details about that, who they are, what, if any, impact their joining the project, if in fact they are, would have on the agreement, the intergovernmental agreement with Kenosha County, and perhaps most importantly, should they be a signatory to our agreement and guarantor of that agreement with respect to certain payments that are made to the county, which would perhaps strengthen our position. I just raised these questions early on because this is the time to take a look at it, and I think that's appropriate for the Corporation Counsel, on behalf of the board, to do it at this early date as opposed to some later date. So I would hope that you would take that on. Thank you.
Supervisor Rose, I'll go a step further and ask that it be brought back to the Executive Committee on the meeting at the 21st of February. I suspect that would give you ample time to do it. And we can report it to the board that evening, or the following meeting then. Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe everybody has a copy of the general fund report. We started the year at 7.7 million roughly. It is expected that we're going to end up at about 8.1 million. The biggest hit, it appears that we're going to take a $2.8 million budget deficit in the health insurance, self-funded health insurance. For years that's been a surplus, so that's our biggest hit. We did decide earlier to transfer $500,000 from the health insurance reserves. It was at 1.5, bringing it down to $1 million. In spite of all of that, in spite of that major hit, it appears that we're going to end up this year, and part of that had to do with our conservative budgeting last year for 2011, because we are having surpluses that we anticipated in the sheriff's federal inmate revenues. We brought the sales tax in line into reality in the 2011 budget to allow that room to grow. It did contribute to surplus. Human Services had placements, where there was significant savings there. So those are the items that kind of carried us to be able to absorb that sort of loss. Thank you.
Supervisor Clark, and I could be wrong, last I recall, the 2.8 million shortfall in health insurance wasn't anywhere near that number.
It was about 2.1. It just continues to, it started out, I think, earlier in the year at $1 million, $1.5 million, and it continues. And earlier in the year, we were talking about trend. That maybe we just had a bad trend, that it wasn't going to continue, but how it has continued.
Do we have a sense for 2012 and how it will trend in 2012?
We do not. We can take a look at that in the Finance and Administration Committee and report back on that.
If we could. Second question, Reserves as percent of general fund, second line down underneath at the bottom here, 13.08%.
Yes. Our policy
That is an actual number.
That's an actual number.
With, if you factor in delinquencies, we're at 19. So we're 4 percentage points shy of our policy. With delinquencies, we are 2 full percentage points above our policy.
Yes, if we, the delinquencies are almost taking that unrestricted dollars. Those are our dollars that are going there, but it doesn't count to the reserves because of the tax delinquencies that have substantially increased through the years to the tune of 3.7 million, I believe, since 2005. That's, you know, eating away at our reserves. I think we are pretty strong in spite of the economic challenges, and to make it through this year, absorbing the type of hit in the health insurance is.
Well, this is significantly better than where we had initially projected we would finish this year.
Yeah, last time I reported on this, I thought we were talking about 7.6 million, and that also included the 500,000 being transferred. So we're about 500,000 better than we were about a month to 2 months ago when we talked about it.
Thank you. Anyone have questions on that report? Seeing no other lights, clerk.
County Executive Appointments, 22, John Calamari to serve on the Kenosha County Commission on Aging.
Refer to Human Services Committee.
23, Sandra Jean Reese to serve on the Kenosha County Commission on Aging.
Also refer to Human Services.
Old Business Ordinance, second reading, 15, from Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee regarding Summers USA LLC owner, Excel Engineering Incorporated agent, requesting approval of an FPO floodplain overlay district boundary adjustment located in the town of Summers. Brunig, yes. Esposito, yes. Kohlmeyer, yes. Underhill, yes. Decker, yes. Hallman, yes. Gable, yes.
Supervisor Brunig.
Move ordinance 15.
Ordinance 15 moved by Brunig, seconded by Supervisor Esposito. Supervisor Brunig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll try this again. This property is located on the northwest corner of I-94 Frontage Road and County Trunk Highway S. The request is for a floodplain overlay district boundary adjustment requiring a cut and fill in the 100-year floodplain to allow construction of an 832 square foot building addition for storage and the installation of additional paving for semi-truck parking. The county conservation engineer reviewed the calculations to ensure compliance with the county's equal area and equal volume floodplain boundary adjustment standards. The town of Summers recommended approval of the request. The Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee reviewed the item at their meeting on December 14th, 2011, and recommends approval of the request.
Anyone on the issue? Ordinance 15. Supervisor Noble.
Somebody coughed and I didn't hear. What's the building that we're trying to build, or somebody's trying to build?
Supervisor Brunig?
I'm sorry, what's
He's
the
asking
question?
what it is you're trying to construct here. Is it a building we're trying to construct?
He's
What?
adding on to the building and putting in additional parking for semi-trucks.
What building?
What building?
You said adding on to the
The
building?
gas station up there.
A gas station, okay. All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of ordinance number 15 signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Before we proceed, the reason this is on the agenda again is there was some question last time on an ordinance whether it needed 2 readings. Our practice had been that it did not, on a simple change that was before us. Do we have that clarified? Going forward, are we doing 2 readings for a map amendment like this? Or a
practice throughout the year. I talked with the Planning and Development Office, and it's been the practice to have 1 reading because of the fact that they have time constraints and people need to get going on their projects. So that's been the practice.
All right. I typically go to the Corporation Counsel's office for legal opinions, not Mr. Melcher's office.
Right.
So what say you, Corporation Counsel?
I'm not able to find any particular provision in the either the county rules or in the zoning ordinance. So you know, until that gets changed and gets clarified, I guess I would have to say you're gonna have to have 2 readings.
All right. We're going to say to the chairwoman of the committee, if there's the desire to work on that change, you'll want to bring that forward. Clerk.
Resolution 83 from Finance Administration Committee regarding a resolution to approve the appointment of Sharon Acerbi to serve on the Kenosha County Library System Board. Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Eckern, yes. Rose, yes. Singer, yes. Grady, yes.
Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Resolution 83.
Resolution 83 moved by Clark, seconded by O'Day. Supervisor Clark.
Resolution 83 is a reappointment of Miss Sharon Acerbi to the Library Board, and her attendance in the last term, she attended 12 out of 13 meetings. She's a very active member. It was passed unanimously by the committee.
Anyone on the issue? Seeing no lights, all those in favor of Resolution 83 signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Resolution 84 from Finance Administration Committee regarding a resolution to approve the successor labor agreement between Kenosha County and the Kenosha County Deputy Sheriff's Association. Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Eckern, yes. Rose, yes. Singer, yes. Grady, yes.
Supervisor Clark.
I move Resolution 84.
Resolution 84 moved by Supervisor Clark, seconded by Vice Chairman Eckerness. Supervisor Clark.
This is the extension of the labor agreement for the deputies. They have agreed to a 2-year freeze in their wages. They have agreed to the the health insurance contributions of high deductible of $2,400 and $4,800, $2,400 single, $4,800 family. There were some side letter agreements that they agreed to let go. That would be the, one of them would have been the 3 days of vacation. Previously, that they no longer have that, and that there was savings to the county. The new deputies that are being hired under state law now have to contribute to their pension plan. The current deputies opted in the negotiation, they have a right to not contribute to their pension. They opted to go that way and decided to have the the deductibles in their plans. So they moved to the new health insurance plan that all the county employees are on. However, the main difference is they have a $2,400 and a $4,800 deductible. The flexible spending was removed from their insurance package as well. For the new deputies that have to contribute to their pension, it was agreed and negotiated that after they're hired they're on for 90 days, and the completion of their probation period, they will get a $1,000 bonus. And then once they complete the next period, I think is within a year, they will also get another $1,000 bonus. The cost of this over the next 2 years is $358,000 or 2.11% per year. So there's a freeze. They're entitled to their step increases. They are now they have gone to the new insurance. They have the high deductible. They've given up their flex. They have given up the side letter agreement on the 3 vacation days. The county will contribute to their pension for the existing members. For the new members, they will have to contribute, and the new hires will get the $1,000, two $1,000 payments. If there are any other questions or I'm missing anything, Mr. Riedel, is there? We're good. Okay. So I urge your support. It passed the committee unanimously. And before I move on, I certainly want to commend the county executive and the administration. The difficult thing for them to do was to come forward and ask for these contributions. in essence, the administration really was trying to equal it out, where some employees have to contribute to their pension. Everybody, there's a belief in the administration, I share that belief, everybody has to share in that pain. We have the public sharing in that pain in a real way, and this is across the board. The county executive has had to really lead the way on a tough issue. I think I don't question our public safety people, our deputies, our police officers, our fire department, that they put their life on the line every day for us, and they should be compensated fairly. I believe that part of that compensation, as intended by the state, was allowing them to have early retirement at the age of 50. In Kenosha County, if they're here long enough, they can retire at 53 with health benefits, while other employees maybe have to work another 10 years to enjoy those benefits. So it's not easy. It's not easy for the executive to do this and really take the lead on this, but it's something that has to be done. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Supervisor Noble.
Thank you. Just a comment, it's been a while, I can't, since I've actually voted in favor of a contract, and I'm very pleased that I'm going to vote in favor of this one. The elimination of the flex spending has always been a bone of contention for me. I'm glad to see we've actually negotiated that out. The elimination of the side letter for 3 days of vacation has been a bone of contention for myself and others. That's been bargained out. And of course, last but not least, the 0% wage increases for 2012 and 2013. So I'm very impressed with this, the negotiating that must have taken place on this, and very impressed with the administration. So I'm pleased to support it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Supervisor Clark, I have one question. If you could clarify, under the health insurance, 1 and 2, explain to me, number 1, projected increase in 2012-2013 health insurance cost per milliman. That is simple increase from 2012 to 2013? We're looking at just shy of $200,000?
Yes, that...
You've got bargain, non-bargain here on 1 and 2. I'm looking for the, I guess, just some clarification.
I'm having difficulties understanding this page, and I talked to Dave, and they're going to look at it. I believe the overall dollar change is correct, but how they're going from column to column, it's very confusing. The lift from 2012 to 2013, the health insurance projection in here is $215,000 on 16%, so you're looking at about a 13% increase. That's not out of the realm of possibility for a health insurance inflationary adjustment. Might be a little strong.
But it is contrary to what we've heard our increase is going to be, and Mr. Riedel's here, he might be able to address that. I was under the impression our increase was single digit.
Our increase for health insurance?
Across the board.
Our increase for health insurance factors in the deficit to some extent. I mean, if I understand your question correctly.
Well, my recollection leading up to the budget debate for the 2012 budget is that we were going to see a very modest single-digit overall increase in our health insurance premium, if you will.
Correct, and I believe that's reflected in the budget.
And I can, on this sheet...
It's not reflected here is my point.
On the sheet, it has 2011 budget at $1,704,000. The 2012 budget had $1,745,000. So that is a very modest increase. The 2012 budget cost per the negotiation decreased to $1.62 million because of the contributions, the high deductible contributions. So you're...
You know, let me rephrase what I'm asking here. I'm looking at the page that compares 2012 and 2013.
I'm having a lot of difficulty with that page. I'm looking at the costing. The math there doesn't make sense. It doesn't compare to the actual costing that was done that we're used to looking at. I have a lot of questions, and I have this page marked up to have Dave Gearson take a look at, and I mentioned it to Bob Riedel. However, the overall number of $358,000 for 2 years, I believe that is correct. When we take a look at that increase over 2 years, just on the salary, FICA, pension, life insurance, and workers' comp is $268,000. And then the health insurance is probably about $90,000 of that over the next 2 years. So the math on the summary page, it just doesn't add up.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Seeing no lights, before us is Resolution 84. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, resolution carries.
Resolution 85 from Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Kathy Bothy to serve on the Civil Service Commission. Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Grlick, excused. Zerban, yes.
Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move resolution number 85.
Resolution 85 moved by Supervisor Michael, seconded by Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a reappointment of Catherine Bothy to the Civil Service Commission. She's served on this commission once before, and we're asking for the reappointment, that should be reappointed to the committee. I urge your support.
Thank you, Supervisor Michael. Any comment? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 85 signify by saying aye. Those opposed, resolution carries.
Resolution 86 from Judiciary and Law Enforcement and Finance Administration Committees, a resolution regarding retired deputy firearm purchase program. From Judiciary and Law, Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Grlick, excused. Zerban, yes. Finance Administration, Clark, yes. O'Day, no. Jeffkens, yes. Eckerness, yes. Rose, no. Singer, yes. Grady, yes.
Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move resolution number 86.
86 moved by Supervisor Michael, seconded by Vice Chairman Eckerness. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution, I requested it basically a month ago. I was at a retirement party for 3 of our deputies, and I was unaware prior to that event that Kenosha County is one of the few law enforcement agencies in which a retiree cannot purchase their firearm. I was informed by Detective Clawwitter, who retired last month, and I confirmed it with the Chief Deputy. This is a unique resolution in the fact that I understand that a lot of county employees do not receive benefits when they retire. I was informed when this was brought up in the Finance Committee, one of the supervisors stated, well, in accounting we don't give calculators to our accountants that retire. But this is, I believe, totally different in the fact that, as Supervisor Clark talked about in his prior resolution, law enforcement officers put their life on the line. Unfortunately, I've been on this county board for 8 years, and I had to go to a funeral of a deputy, Frank Fabiano, who gave the ultimate sacrifice. He died in the line of duty. And our deputies do a lot for this community. I have quite a bit of friends that are in law enforcement, and they're unique individuals. I grew up in a family where my father told me, basically, if you seen trouble, you turned around, you got out of there, you make call and tell the police, let them handle it. But I've been in different social events where I've seen individuals, law enforcement officers here in Kenosha, who are not on duty, who actually went to the aid of individuals who have used their law enforcement skills to de-escalate situations. And these are individuals that aren't being paid at that time. I think it's somewhat ironic that the chair I'm sitting in right now was held by It used to be held by Supervisor Huff. Supervisor Huff was a law enforcement officer. He retired from the Kenosha Police Department, and a few months after he retired, I was reading the Kenosha News, and there was a situation in which a law enforcement officer was dealing with a mob, and basically he came to the aid of his former colleague. And I think on how Wisconsin legislators have created this bill for carry and conceal, which we're all aware of, everybody believes that people need to protect the community. And if anyone should be carrying weapons, it should be our retirees. Our retirees save this county thousands of dollars. I don't know if a lot of people realize that the Sheriff's Department basically contracts out with our retirees to do a lot of the transporting of the mental health individuals that allows the county to use its deputies in ways that so we don't need additional officers, and by having these deputies work or contract with them, it saves thousands of dollars. I think this is a resolution that's appropriate. I'd urge unanimous support. I've talked to the police chief. Kenosha, the city of Kenosha does this. They sell their weapons to the retirees for $1, and I think it's appropriate, and I think we should do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the chair of the committee, if I could, you mentioned the city of Kenosha does it for $1. I'm curious why the price tag, why we wouldn't just make it a retirement gift and say, thank you for your service.
If I can, we can address that through the fact that it is property of the municipality. You cannot give it away. You have to actually sell it, just like we sell our squad cars. We sell our old furniture, our old computers. You cannot just give it away. So this is it's basically a nominal fee, but we have to do that.
I'm tempted to ask if we could amend it down to a penny, and I'm not saying that to be cute. I know it sounds absurd, doesn't it? Yes. I didn't make it a motion, I'm just saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Rumor has it we'll have 5 desks available in here come April. Just throwing that out there.
They're not for sale.
They're not for sale. Clerk says they're not for sale.
No, you think
At $1 or any other comment on resolution number 86? Seeing no lights. All those in favor of resolution 86 signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Resolution 87 from Judiciary and Law Enforcement and Finance Administration Committees, a resolution regarding organized crime drug enforcement task forces overtime funds offer. Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Gurlick, excuse. Zerban, yes. Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Singer, yes. Eckerness, yes. Rose, yes. Grady, yes.
Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move resolution number 87.
Resolution 87 moved by Michael, seconded by O'Day. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution is to accept an additional $4,000 in federal organized crime drug enforcement task force office to reimburse overtime that occurred through the sheriff's drug unit for assisting and also for testifying in these federal cases. I urge your support.
Anyone on resolution 87? Seeing no lights, this is a grant funding. Roll call vote. If you're in favor, P and plus. If you're opposed, P and minus. Budget modification. That's the phrase I'm looking for. Jeepers. We need a couple more. Oh, that's right. Supervisor Clark stepped out. We need one more then, don't we?
Just Supervisor Clark.
Motion carries 20-0.
Well, excuse me. Resolution 88 from Judiciary and Law Enforcement and Finance Administration Committee, a resolution regarding Wisconsin DOT I-94 North-South Freeway Traffic Mitigation Contract for 2011-2013. Judiciary and Law, Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Grlick, excused. Zurbani, yes. Finance Administration, Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Eckerness, yes. Rose, yes. Singer, yes. Grady, yes.
Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move resolution number 88.
Resolution 88 moved by Michael, seconded by O'Day. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution is to approve a contract with the Department of Transportation and the Sheriff's Department to provide patrol coverage in the construction zone on I-94. This resolution only represents a budgetary change for the 2011 budget year. The state would reimburse the Sheriff's Department for labor and vehicle maintenance costs occurred for one deputy for 8 hours per day, September 1st through December 1st of 2011. The contract allows for approximately $35,658. The labor hours will be straight time as currently patrolled on I-94 corridor. I'd urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the resolution? Get a budget modification. If you're in favor, P and plus. If you're opposed, P and minus. One more. All right, there we go. Motion carries 20-0.
Resolution 89 from Judiciary and Law Enforcement and Finance Administration Committees, a resolution regarding Wisconsin DOT bots traffic enforcement grants 2011-2012. Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Grlick, excused. Zurbani, yes. Finance Administration, Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Eckerness, yes. Rose, yes. Singer, yes. Grady, yes.
Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move resolution number 89.
Resolution 89 moved by Supervisor Michael, seconded by Supervisor O'Day. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you. This resolution regarding the Wisconsin Bureau of Transportation Safety, the BOTS Traffic Enforcement Grant Awards. Basically, it awards $29,000 for speed enforcement effort. The money will be used to fund both deputy sheriff's overtime and benefits for sheriff extra patrols and equipment that need to be purchased. Alcohol enforcement awards approximately $27,000. This funding will be used to fund both overtime costs for the extra patrols and equipment. Seatbelt compliance effort awards approximately $24,000. The funding is for reimbursement of overtime benefits for extra patrols. The local match requirement will be soft match dollars such as mileage costs, straight time personnel costs, designated patrol districts, public information and education costs. The resolution, budget modification, and grant award documents are awarding a total of $80,000. The funding period for these enforcement projects is October 2011 through September of 2012. I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. On the resolution number 89, I have Supervisor Johnson's light flashing. You, no. Supervisor Noble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I always like it when we buy some equipment with these grants because the equipment lasts much longer than the 1 year of the enforcement. But normally it tells us what equipment we're buying, and I don't see it here. There's about $8,000 worth of equipment. Do we know what we purchased with this grant? According to the budget modification form, there's $8,160 worth of equipment.
You know what, that was not discussed at the meeting. Usually what it is for flashlights, additional
Point of information.
State your point.
Yeah, I believe when I saw this resolution committee, it was actually for urine specimen cups and things of such for testing. Not point of information, but just what to address the question. For supplies to enforce that actual resolution for the testing to make sure that they weren't relapsing.
We sure that's not on number 90?
Yeah, I believe that's the other resolution for WCS.
My apologies.
Yeah.
But with this one, I think it was regarding with the traffic stops. I believe the officers use the orange jackets with the magnetic or the funky tape, and and things like that. I apologize, I don't have the proper terminology, but it's basically the safety.
All right, the resolution only references law enforcement equipment. If you need more than that, it doesn't appear that we have that this evening.
Well, I don't guess I need more than that, but I guess I want to make the point that the equipment lasts much longer than the overtime. So whenever, I've always been in favor of buying as much equipment as we can on these grants because it lasts for 5 or more years. Thank you.
And it probably wouldn't hurt to urge the Sheriff's Department to come forward with a better itemization of the equipment in the future. I know they typically do, so maybe this one just slipped under the radar. Any other comment? Seeing none, again, a budget modification. All those in favor of Resolution 89, P and plus, opposed, P and minus. Motion carries 20-0.
Resolution 90 from Judiciary and Law Enforcement and Finance Administration Committees, a resolution regarding Wisconsin DOT Kenosha County Pretrial Intensive Supervision Program 15 grant. Judiciary and Law, Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Gurlick, excuse. Zerban, yes. Finance and Admin, Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Eckerness, yes. Rose, yes. Singer, yes. Grady, yes.
Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Resolution 90.
Resolution 90 moved by Michael, seconded by Supervisor O'Day. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As stated, this is the Wisconsin DOT Pretrial Intensive Supervision Program. Here in Kenosha, we contract with what's called WCS, it's Wisconsin Correctional Services. This program is used strictly with individuals that have been charged with OWI. It's when individuals are on bond. They report to the agency that is currently located at the Kenosha Safety Building. They do drop regularly urinalysis to make sure they're bond compliant, and it's a great monitoring process for the court system. If an individual does turn up positive, a letter is sent, actually faxed to the circuit court judge that is overseeing the case, and usually when that comes in, the individual's bond gets modified by the circuit court judge, so that if a person is non-compliant, they know they're going to go directly to jail without stopping and not pass and go, exactly. And I'd urge your support. It's approximately $53,574. The program does work, and it allows individuals to be monitored without being incarcerated yet. If they are non-compliant, as I stated earlier, they will be locked up. Thank you.
Thank you. On the question of Resolution 90, seeing no lights, budget modification, all those in favor, P and plus, those opposed, P and minus. 20-0.
Communications from Georgie Melcher regarding future items scheduled before the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee.
Refer to Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee.
Approval of the January 3rd, 2012 minutes by Supervisor Brunig.
Supervisor Brunig. Minutes moved by Supervisor Brunig, seconded by Supervisor Hallman. Anyone on the question? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn, Supervisor Michael, seconded by Supervisor Brunig. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you all.